Joining us now is Samantha Power, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. She's also author of the memoir, The Education of an Idealist, which is excellent. Ambassador Power, it's really, really nice to have you here tonight. Thanks for making the time.
Always.
President-elect Biden has introduced some of the senior appointees that he's making in the national security and diplomatic fields. Many, if not all of the people who are on that stage with him today, I know are people who you've worked with in various capacities. I just have to ask your reaction to these announcements that he's made and what it should tell us about what kind of president he'll be.
I found today indescribably moving. I think you saw on that stage the resurrection of appreciation for expertise, the invocation of science and facts, the respect for the workforce that so many of the people who be coming in as political appointees, but really wanted to signal and to stress already how much they valued those people who have slogged it out for these 4 years and remained and tried to buck some of the worst tendencies of the Trump political appointees. But also, Rachel, I got a Kleenex box here that's a little emptier than it was when the day started, because I think, a number of the speakers talked as well about something that we haven't heard much of this last 4 years, which is America as an idea. And there's so much, of course, that's wrong with, how things have gone in so many domains. But the fact that Tony Blinken can talk about what America represented for his stepfather as he's getting liberated by an African-American GI, that he could talk about his grandfather fleeing the pogroms in Russia, that Ali Mayorkas is going to become the first immigrant, the first Latino to run DHS. DHS, that would be the agency that Stephen Miller has exerted unprecedented influence over from the White House, the agency that has helped separate parents from their children. And here we have somebody who fled the communist regime in Cuba running that agency and re-injecting the humanity and compassion and recognition that it is in America's interest to be a welcoming country. That look where the vaccine is going to come from, right? It's companies that are led by immigrants or children of immigrants, and that understanding just pervaded what went on today. Last thing, I guess, I was very struck by Jake Sullivan, who will be team captain there in the cockpit of the Situation Room. But he has run domestic policy of late. He's a longtime national security hand. But his understanding, having helped oversee Biden's domestic policy agenda, the pandemic response, the climate response, the Build Back Better, but for him now to be running foreign policy with such an unusual, for a national security actor, an unusual appreciation of the domestic policy agenda, the domestic constraints, the domestic landscape, the need for domestic constituencies, the need for our foreign policy to serve the middle class. It's really unusual and exceptional. So it was a rare, great, clean day, if I may.
The argument that you made in print in this latest essay that you just published about restoring faith in American competence, not just America's desire to play a leading role in world affairs and to play a protective and beneficial and supportive role to our allies, but our ability to do so, kind of hit me where it hurts, because I feel like the whole idea of, America first and America alone, it sort of makes sense that that comes from the political right, because it goes easily with this anti-government idea that the United States shouldn't try to do things around the world, and we shouldn't even try to do things necessarily to help our own people, because government is inherently incompetent and inherently bad, and therefore the real role of government should be quite small and people should fend for themselves. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy if you bring that role into governance, and if you spend 4 years hollowing out, denigrating, and perverting the use and function of important U.S. government agencies. I'm worried, and I have to ask, how worried are you that the Trump administration has hobbled the ability of the U.S. government to do right, to do well when it comes to things like distributing a vaccine or being a responsible member of an international treaty?
Well, the case in point, of course, is the response to the pandemic, and no single event, I think in recent, at least, American history has done more visible damage to America's standing in the world than having such a high per capita infection and death rate. For this is the country of Silicon Valley, the country of Henry Ford and Steve Jobs and the man on the moon and the Berlin landing. And for the rest of the world now to see us in this light, in part because of our divisions, but again, because largely half of those divisions was leading in a manner that was encouraging people not to take proper precautions and, not to bring the country together at a time of national crisis. I take your point that it is a self-fulfilling prophecy that the ravaging of the Environmental Protection Agency or the language expertise at the State Department makes it hard for the president-elect and his team to come in and then reignite those elements who have so much competence to bring to bear. But a lot of people have stayed, Rachel. A lot of people thought it was their civic duty and their patriotic duty to stay, to continue to fight, to throw their body in the tracks. Often they found themselves marginalized, and they may be hard to find because they may be in some basement somewhere where they've sort of tried to hang on here, waiting for the return of people who valued expertise. But I do think there are opportunities, and there are opportunities that, frankly, should get bipartisan support that involve bringing the private sector into a partnership with government. That also recognizes that there are things that non-governmental actors do better than large government agencies, and particularly large bureaucracies. So a couple of the things that I mentioned, in fact, involve the pandemic response. We will not be able to get our economy really back on track until the global economic engine is purring again. That will not happen as long as people are dying of this virus and this pandemic in developing countries where our supply chains extend and our trade links reach into. And so it's in our interest to be part of a large burden-sharing effort to get the vaccine to poor countries. Yes, we've ordered 800 million vaccines for the American people, and of course, keeping the American people safe is the commander-in-chief's responsibility, but so too is getting America back to work. And so there's an example where partnering with private foundations, of course, like Bill Gates, but also these same companies who are making the vaccine, along with returning to the World Health Organization, COVAX, this global vaccine alliance, there's a way to be back at the table and showcasing what America has to offer, well beyond restoring this or returning to that, doing something new and fresh and meeting people in their hour of great need. I also think education and our universities, what a way to showcase what America still has to offer in terms of intellectual capital than to welcome back international students, which, by the way, is a huge source of income for our economy. When we don't have a pandemic, nonetheless, Trump allowed those numbers to begin to fall substantially, and for Biden to make that a priority again. 20% of African leaders today, Rachel, have been educated in some form at an American university. I mean, that is a gift that keeps on giving, well and apart from the financial benefits and the soft power benefits, again, to showing what we still have to offer as a country.
Samantha Power, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. Madam Ambassador, thank you so much for being here tonight. This is a delicate and really important, but also often quite moving moment in American civic discourse. Thanks for helping us understand it. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. We have to appreciate the good days when we have them, Rachel, I believe.
That's exactly right. It's the thing I'm worst at in the world, but you're exactly right. Thank you, Samantha. It's good to see you. All right, we'll be